The first thing most men don't realize after sleeping with a woman is how vulnerable they actually become, not in a physical way, but mentally and emotionally. You think you're in control, you think it's just sex, but what's happening underneath the surface is often far more subtle and dangerous. The moment the act is over, your mind starts racing. You may not say it out loud, but the questions creep in. Was I good enough? Does she feel something for me now? What does this mean for us? This is where you lose your power, not because she took it, but because you handed it over without even noticing. What you need to understand is that intimacy has a psychological cost. It's not free, and I'm not talking about money or time. I'm talking about mental energy. The real danger isn't in the act itself. It's in what you allow your mind to do after the act. This is why the very first thing you must do is reclaim your mental center. You have to return to yourself, because in those moments of post-intimacy vulnerability, your mind is looking for somewhere to latch onto, and if you don't give it direction, it will cling to her. That's where the spiral begins. Think about it. For many men, sex is more than just a physical release. It's subconsciously used as proof of desirability, validation, or even emotional connection. But if you don't pause and pull yourself back into your center, you allow your mind to create false attachments. You start believing there's a bond where there may be none. You assign meaning to a moment that may have simply been mutual indulgence, and in doing so, you give her power she didn't ask for and likely doesn't want. Now you're no longer acting from your masculine core. You're reacting from emotional confusion. Reclaiming your mental center means sitting with yourself in silence after the experience. It means reminding yourself that you are whole, before her, during her, and after her. It's grounding yourself in your life purpose, your mission, your emotional sovereignty. Most men rush to define what just happened. Does this mean we're something now? Should I text her? Should I ask when I can see her again? All of that noise comes from a man who has lost touch with his own emotional compass. You have to anchor yourself before you drift. Here's the thing most men don't realize. Women can feel when a man becomes emotionally needy after sex. They may not articulate it, but they pick up on it. She senses the shift when your energy starts orbiting around her instead of your own life. She feels the neediness in the follow-up text, in the over-enthusiastic compliments, in the sudden emotional urgency. And once she senses that shift, the attraction begins to fade. Not because you're unworthy, but because you've reversed the polarity. You're now chasing validation instead of radiating presence. And look, this doesn't mean you need to be cold, distant, or emotionally shut off. That's not masculine strength. That's fear disguised as detachment. What I'm saying is this: let your presence be rooted in internal balance. Give yourself space to process what happened, not to overanalyze, but to stabilize. Ask yourself, what did I feel in that moment? Was I really present, or was I acting on autopilot? What does this mean to me, aside from what I hope it means to her? These questions don't make you weak, they make you wise. Reclaiming your mental center also prevents you from falling into transactional thinking, the kind that sounds like, well, I gave her my time, attention, and body. Now she owes me emotional investment. That's a dangerous slope. Because the moment you believe she owes you something for the intimacy you shared, you've already lost. No one owes you anything for sex, not even appreciation. You chose to be there. You chose to engage. Now choose to own your response. That's power. The kind of man who can look a woman in the eye the next morning and still feel whole, regardless of whether she calls, stays, or walks away, is a man who commands respect. Not because he's playing games, but because he's emotionally anchored. His sense of self doesn't rise and fall with every kiss, every night, or every text received or ignored. He can love deeply, desire passionately, and still return to his center when the moment ends. That is emotional discipline. That is masculine maturity. So the next time you find yourself in that post-intimacy space, don't rush to react. Don't text her 5 minutes later hoping to hear, "That was amazing." Don't look for signs of commitment in the way she breathes next to you. Breathe into yourself, come back to your mission, take a cold shower, go for a walk, write in your journal, get back into your routine, not because you're ignoring her, but because you're prioritizing you. That's not selfish, that's foundational, because here's the truth. When you reclaim your center, you don't just protect yourself. You become more attractive, more focused, more in control of your emotional world. And that's the kind of man women respect. That's the kind of man you respect. After you've slept with a woman, there's a subtle but critical moment that determines how she perceives you moving forward, and more importantly, how you perceive yourself. And yet most men squander that moment because they move too fast, driven by emotion instead of direction. They send the good morning text. They try to plan the next meetup. They over-explain how much they enjoyed the night. But underneath all of it is one thing, the need to be validated, the need to know she still wants them, the need to make sure the connection wasn't just physical, but maybe, just maybe, something more. And that's exactly why you need to do the opposite. You don't chase, you don't overreach, you don't try to secure emotional territory that isn't yours to claim. Instead, you lead with silence, not because you're playing games, but because your silence speaks volumes. It tells her you are not emotionally dependent on her reaction to feel like a man. It tells her you're grounded. It tells her you're not in a rush to force connection. You're willing to let it unfold naturally, without pressure, without anxiety. Because here's what most men don't understand. Silence is not absence. It's not neglect. It's space. And in that space, a woman can actually feel the gravity of your energy. When you rush in, when you fill every gap with noise, texts, emojis, overeager compliments, you rob her of the opportunity to miss you. And without the space to miss you, she never values your presence. Neediness suffocates desire. Presence cultivates it. There's something powerful about a man who can simply be still after intimacy, a man who doesn't jump to define the moment, who doesn't immediately need to know what this means. That kind of man doesn't come off as disinterested. He comes off as emotionally mature. He understands that the deepest bonds are never forged through pressure or pursuit, but through calm consistency and emotional clarity. He understands that women are deeply intuitive, and they can feel when a man is trying to rush a connection out of insecurity instead of letting things evolve out of alignment. And let me be clear, this isn't about manipulating her. This isn't about using silence as a weapon or withholding affection to gain power. That's immature and ultimately self-defeating. What I'm talking about is a more evolved form of masculine energy, restraint, discipline, and intentionality. The kind of energy that says, I respect what we shared, but I don't need to cling to it to validate who I am. That kind of man doesn't move emotionally just because he moved physically. He keeps his emotional center intact and lets her come to him in her own time if she truly feels a connection. The reality is, most women are used to men who chase after sex, who get clingy, who can't hold their emotional ground once they've been physically intimate. So when she meets a man who doesn't immediately start orbiting around her after the act, it surprises her. It intrigues her. She begins to wonder who he is, why he's different, why he doesn't need constant contact or affirmation. That curiosity builds tension, and tension, when it's born from mystery, not manipulation, is incredibly magnetic. There's also a deeper layer to this, something philosophical. Silence is a form of power. It's a rejection of the need to perform, to explain, to impress. It's a confident declaration that says, I am enough even when I say nothing. In a world where everyone is constantly broadcasting, the man who can be quiet becomes a rarity. His energy becomes a mystery to solve, not a puzzle already explained. He commands attention without demanding it, and in that space, something else happens too. You give yourself the chance to listen, to observe. You get to see how she follows up. Does she check in? Does she reciprocate? Does she show emotional maturity and interest? Or does she fade away because the attention well dried up? Silence reveals her truth just as much as it grounds yours. The way you respond after sex sets the tone, not just for how she sees you, but for how you hold yourself in every other area of life. A man who can lead with silence isn't just attractive, he's dangerous in the best possible way. Because he's untouchable, not because he doesn't feel, but because he doesn't chase. He chooses, he observes, he moves with clarity, not desperation. And let me say this to the men who fear silence, those who believe that if they don't text her first, they'll lose her. If your connection is strong, silence will deepen it. If it's weak, silence will expose it. Either way, silence tells you the truth faster than words ever will. So the next time you find yourself reaching for your phone, about to send that reflexive "had a great time" message, stop. Pause, ask yourself, am I sending this because it's intentional, or because I need a response to feel secure? Because real men don't move from need, they move from knowing, and what you must know is this: the strongest presence often requires the fewest words. Silence isn't passive, it's presence in its most potent form, so lead with it, not to manipulate, not to control, but to honor yourself. If she's aligned with you, she'll feel it. If she's not, she'll fade. And either way, you'll remain whole. Thought for a couple of seconds, the moment the physical connection ends, your mind begins to sketch its own story. You catch yourself drifting into daydreams, replaying each touch, each whispered word, imagining a future that may never arrive. But here's the catch: fantasy is not a compass, it's a mirage. It will dissolve the second reality checks in, leaving you stranded in disappointment. Instead, what you need right now is clear-eyed reflection. You must discern her intentions with the same precision you bring to your own, because while your desires are powerful, they can also blind you to the truth of her actions, and truth is the foundation from which you build real power. Imagine you're standing at a crossroads, the road behind you bathed in the warm afterglow of intimacy, the road ahead shrouded in uncertainty. Fantasy would have you sprint backward, clinging to memories that feel good but reveal nothing. Reflection, on the other hand, asks you to turn forward, to examine what's truly there. Ask yourself, was her engagement in that moment wholehearted, or was it mechanical? Did she laugh at your jokes, or did she merely nod politely? Did she maintain eye contact, or did her gaze wander? These aren't petty details, they are signposts pointing to her genuine investment, or lack thereof. This isn't about becoming cold or clinical. It's about bringing the same analytical rigor to relationships that you would to any significant decision in life: your career, your finances, your personal growth. When you meet with a potential business partner, you assess their track record. You notice patterns of reliability or inconsistency. You don't let optimism blind you to warning signs. Why would intimacy be any different? Here too, patterns matter. Does she follow up with a message the next day, or does she disappear? Does she express curiosity about your world, or does she vanish once the night's over? Reflection illuminates these patterns. Fantasy obscures them. Philosophically, this process is about aligning perception with reality. There's a concept in Stoic thought called the discipline of assent. The idea that you only accept impressions as true when they withstand rational scrutiny. In the context of post-intimacy reflection, you practice that discipline by filtering your emotional impulses through the sieve of logic. You acknowledge what you want to believe. Maybe this is the start of something real, but you don't assent to it until evidence supports it. This doesn't make you pessimistic. It makes you prepared to see her for who she truly is, rather than who you hope she to be. And here's where many men falter. They confuse hope with proof. They scroll through old messages, hunting for hidden signs, interpreting every emoji as a secret vow. But interpretation without context is a trap. She may have sent that winky face in jest, or she may have been texting someone else. Without assessing her overall behavior, her consistency, her curiosity, her follow-through, you're constructing castles in the air. Castles have no foundation. They crumble at the first gust of reality. So instead, ground yourself in clear criteria. Define what genuine interest looks like for you. Maybe it's a message within 24 hours. Maybe it's a question about your day. Maybe it's an invitation to meet again. Whatever it is, state it plainly in your mind. Then observe, does her behavior meet that standard? If yes, you have reason to engage further. If no, you have permission to move on without regret. In either case, you're acting from a position of clarity, not confusion. When you reflect rather than fantasize, you also protect your emotional energy. Worry, doubt, and obsessive longing all stem from unexamined thoughts. Their feedback loops powered by imagining worst case scenarios or ideal outcomes that may never materialize. But when you shine the light of rational inquiry on those thoughts, when you ask, what's the evidence here, those loops break. You can allocate your energy where it belongs, to your work, your passions, your friendships, and to relationships that demonstrate reciprocal investment. Ultimately, this habit of discerning intentions is not just about women. It's about becoming a more self-aware man. It's the same skill that helps you negotiate a deal, cultivate leadership, or build a lasting legacy. You learn to separate signal from noise. You learn to trust evidence over emotion. You learn to take responsibility for your own narrative, rather than allowing your mind to hijack you with fantasies of what if. So as you walk away from that crossroads, whether you choose to pursue this woman further or you choose to close this chapter, you do so with purpose. You understand that genuine connection can't be forced by desire. It emerges through mutual, consistent action. And you're no longer at the mercy of your own projections. You're the architect of your reality, equipped with the tools to build something authentic. Remember this: fantasy fuels hope without grounding, but reflection breeds clarity without cynicism. When you train yourself to discern intention, you honor both your mind and your heart. You step into every encounter with confidence and wisdom, and in that space you'll either find a connection worthy of your time, or you'll free yourself to pursue higher ground. It's easy to believe the work is done once the physical act is over, when clothes are back on, when you're lying there in silence, or walking away into the next part of your day. But here's the truth no one talks about. The real work begins after sex. And I'm not talking about anything you do with her. I'm talking about something far more important. What you do with yourself, specifically how you choose to conduct yourself emotionally, mentally, and energetically in the hours and days that follow. Because the fourth thing you must not forget to do, right after sleeping with a woman, is reset your focus. You must shift the spotlight back onto your path, your goals, and your self-development immediately. Not eventually, not tomorrow, not when she replies to your message, but right now. The mistake most men make is they linger, they loiter emotionally. They hang around in the emotional aftermath of the moment, waiting for something. Her message, her approval, her confirmation that what just happened meant something. But that pause, that emotional idling, that's where momentum dies, not just in relationships, but in you. That's where a man starts losing his rhythm, forgetting his path, outsourcing his center of gravity to someone else's response. You must understand, sex is not just a physical act. It's an energetic exchange. It shifts your focus. It opens a door to emotional vulnerability. And if you don't consciously close that door and walk back into your masculine direction, you can find yourself derailed, unfocused, emotionally foggy. That's why immediately after intimacy, your greatest discipline isn't about what you do with her. It's about how fast you can return to you, your goals, your mission, your structure. This is why so many men feel off. For days after sleeping with someone they're not emotionally aligned with. They can't explain it, but they feel unmotivated, or confused, or even slightly agitated. That's not random. That's the cost of distraction, not the woman. You distracted yourself from your inner architecture. You allowed that brief experience to throw off the system that governs your clarity, your confidence, your drive. So what do you do instead? You reset, you recalibrate. You remember that no matter how amazing the moment was, no matter how beautiful she is, no matter how connected it felt, you are still you, and your path still needs tending. Your morning routine still matters. Your training still matters. Your business, your learning, your spiritual discipline still matter. You don't pause all of that to see where this goes. You keep going and let whatever's meant to align with you catch up. A high-value man doesn't revolve around romantic experiences. He integrates them into a life already in motion. He doesn't stop building because he got a little validation. He builds through the validation and past it. And that's what makes him magnetic, because most women, especially evolved, emotionally intelligent women, are not attracted to a man who sacrifices his focus for her affection. They're drawn to the man who can hold space for both desire and direction, who can experience intimacy and still rise the next morning with his priorities untouched. Philosophically, this is the discipline of masculine energy. It's not cold, it's not detached, it's anchored. Masculinity at its core is about structure. Mental, emotional, spiritual. It's about holding firm even when emotions rise, even when your body says, let's stay in this moment forever, because you know better. You know the moment is fleeting and the mission is eternal. You don't live for connection, you live with purpose. Connection is a gift, not a compass. It enhances the journey, but it never replaces the path. This reset is especially important when the woman you just slept with feels emotionally ambiguous. Maybe you don't know what she wants. Maybe she's hot and cold. Maybe you're not sure what you want. That ambiguity can be intoxicating. It can keep your thoughts running in circles. But every moment spent ruminating is a moment not spent building. Every hour spent refreshing your messages is an hour you didn't sharpen your skill, finish your task, or lead your own life. So reset, go lift weights, go read, go earn, go build something. Let your action drown out your obsession. Let your forward movement become the medicine, because when you move forward, you regain clarity. You rise out of fantasy and into form. You remember who you are outside of her gaze. This doesn't mean you disregard the experience. It doesn't mean you pretend it didn't matter, but you don't let it consume you. You give it the space it deserves, no more, no less. And then you return to your center over and over again. That's what makes a man unshakable, not because he never feels, but because he never loses himself in what he feels. He can experience deep intimacy and still hold the frame of who he is. He can enjoy the moment and still walk away with his vision intact. That is real power. That is what women respect. That is what separates the man who is remembered from the one who is forgotten. So don't just float in the emotional echo of the night. Don't wait for her text to determine how you feel about yourself today. Wake up, breathe deep, and get back to building. Get back to becoming. Let the intimacy be a moment of pleasure, not a detour from purpose. Here's something few men truly grasp. Intimacy doesn't end when the act is over. Not for her, not for you. It continues, quietly, invisibly, in how you behave, how you carry yourself, and how you speak in the aftermath. This brings us to one of the most underrated and misunderstood responsibilities a man has after sleeping with a woman: upholding emotional responsibility. And I don't mean emotional attachment or a promise of forever. I mean owning your energy, owning the impact of your presence, and honoring the psychological space you just shared. Because whether you want to admit it or not, the moment you enter her body, you've entered a different dimension of emotional territory. Even if it was just casual, even if both of you agreed it wasn't serious, something shifted. There was vulnerability, there was access, there was a moment when both of you allowed yourselves to be seen, even if just for a flash. And how you handle after that flash, how you walk out of her space, emotionally and mentally, says everything about your maturity. Too many men make the mistake of thinking that honesty only matters before sex, that their only obligation is to be clear about what they want up front, and once that's done, they can check out emotionally without any consequence. But that's not real integrity, because what you do after the fact can say more than what you said before it. You can't claim to be grounded, respectful, or mature if you vanish the moment you've gotten what you wanted. Now, I'm not suggesting you owe her love or a commitment. That's not what this is about. This is about emotional hygiene, psychological maturity. It's about not leaving emotional debris in your wake. Every action you take post-intimacy, your tone, your timing, your honesty, either adds to your masculine power or erodes it. Because women feel energy more than they analyze words. They don't just remember what you did with them. They remember how you made them feel afterward. So ask yourself, did you make her feel respected after the act, or discarded? Did you give her presence, even if brief, or did you treat the moment like a transaction? Did you make space for her humanness, or did you emotionally evaporate the second you got dressed? Emotional responsibility isn't about performance, it's about presence. It means you understand that your energy lingers, that even if it was casual for you, it might not have been entirely casual for her, that even if she doesn't express it, she's reflecting too. She's deciding whether you're just another man who took, or one of the rare few who respected. And here's the philosophical truth of it all. A man's strength is not measured only in what he can conquer, it's in what he can hold without needing to flee. Can you hold the weight of someone's trust, even if temporary? Can you carry yourself with enough discipline to not ghost, not breadcrumb, not manipulate, just because the chase is over? Can you be so rooted in your identity that you don't need to pretend, disappear, or emotionally withdraw to feel powerful? Women remember emotional safety. They remember how grounded or chaotic your energy was once the heat faded. They remember whether your silence felt peaceful or punishing. And make no mistake, your post-intimacy behavior becomes your emotional signature. It's how she files you away in her memory, as a boy playing grown-up games, or as a man whose presence left her better, not confused. There's another side to this, too. When you practice emotional responsibility, you elevate yourself. You separate yourself from the average, because the average man is reactive. He gets what he wants and moves on. But the evolved man, he pauses, he considers, he follows through not out of guilt, but out of character. He checks in not to earn points, but because presence is part of who he is. He doesn't text to seduce. He texts to close the loop with clarity, even if it's to say, hey, I'm grateful for our time, but I'm not in a space to build anything further. That kind of message may not be romantic, but it's honest, it's powerful, it's clean, and it allows both of you to move on without emotional confusion, because closure, in its simplest form, is respect. And respect is the backbone of any man worth remembering. If you're going to show up in a woman's life, even briefly, then leave her better, not wounded, not second, guessing herself, not questioning her worth. Don't leave behind a mess that another man has to clean up. Don't collect bodies like trophies and then wonder why your spirit feels empty. Sex may be casual, but your behavior never should be. Real men don't just get the girl. Real men honor the experience, without overpromising, without pretending, without hiding behind ego. They walk in truth, they exit with grace. They hold their energy like a sword, never used recklessly, but always with purpose. That's emotional responsibility, and that's where your power truly matures. So next time you find yourself at the edge of that shared moment, ask yourself, will she remember the fire, or will she respect the man who walked her through it? You said, expand key point 6 into a 900 word segment that flows naturally within the overall speech, aligning seamlessly with the other key points. The tone should be intellectual and authoritative, yet accessible, mirroring Jessic's opera approach. The language should be clear and direct, with a focus on psychological and philosophical depth. Avoid any formal headings, keeping the delivery conversational, as if speaking to an audience in a lecture or interview format. Conclude with a powerful, concise closing statement that leaves the audience with something to reflect on. Motivating them, ChatGPT said, "There's something that doesn't get talked about enough when we discuss intimacy, especially from a masculine perspective. And it's this: after you've slept with a woman, you must reevaluate her role in your life, not based on how you feel, but based on what you've seen. This is where most men get it wrong. They confuse intensity with compatibility. They confuse access with alignment. They confuse pleasure with purpose. And instead of stepping back to observe the woman for who she actually is, they cling to a version of her shaped by hormones, projections, and unspoken hope. You see, sex has a way of clouding judgment, especially for men who aren't grounded in emotional awareness. You feel chemistry, connection, even a sense of bonding, and your mind starts filling in the gaps. Maybe she's different. Maybe this is going somewhere. Maybe I've found someone special. But the truth is, you don't know yet. All you've shared is a moment. It might have been beautiful, it might have been deep, but that moment is not a blueprint for a future. It's just that a moment. What happens after will tell you everything you need to know. That's why the sixth thing you must do, immediately after sleeping with a woman, is evaluate her character beyond the bedroom. Strip away the pleasure, the passion, the flirty banter, and look at who she actually is. How does she treat people when no one is watching? How does she handle conflict, pressure, or silence? What's her relationship with truth, with consistency, with herself? Because too many men build castles in their minds based on nothing but sexual energy. They give loyalty to a woman who hasn't earned their trust. They give emotional investment to someone whose only real connection was physical. And once again, they find themselves confused when she pulls away, becomes cold, or starts showing signs of disinterest. But the signs were always there, you just didn't want to look. You were too caught up in the feeling to evaluate the facts. Philosophically, this comes down to discernment, your ability to separate temporary intensity from long-term potential. The ancient Stoics taught that emotions are not inherently bad, but they must be observed before they are obeyed. In other words, feel the chemistry, enjoy the fire, but don't build your decisions on the flame. Wait for the smoke to clear, and then ask, who is she really? Not who she appeared to be in bed, but who she reveals herself to be in life. Does she follow through with her word? Is she emotionally mature? Or does she lean on manipulation and games? Does she respect boundaries, or does she test them? Is she present, or is she performing? All of these questions matter more than how beautiful the moment felt. Because if you ignore these answers, you'll start investing in someone whose reality doesn't match the fantasy you've created, and that always ends in disappointment. Let's be clear, this isn't about judging her. This is about protecting your energy, because once you sleep with a woman, your emotional defenses are down. You've let someone into a sacred space. That doesn't mean she now deserves your commitment or future, but it does mean you have to be even more careful with what you offer next. Don't give her a relationship because the sex was good. Give her consideration because her actions after sex reflect integrity, depth, and alignment with your values. And you know what? Sometimes you'll realize she's not who you thought she was. Maybe she doesn't show up the way you expected. Maybe she disappears. Maybe she becomes passive, aggressive, emotionally distant, or overly demanding. Good. Let that clarity be your blessing. The worst thing you can do is ignore the red flags just because the bedroom was exciting. You don't marry pleasure, you marry character, and that distinction might be the most important one a man can learn. This is also why you must give time before making emotional decisions. Don't go labeling her as the one, just because the night felt powerful. Let the dust settle. Let her reveal her consistency, her curiosity about your world, her willingness to engage with you beyond desire. Let her show up as a person, not just a partner in bed, and then decide. Evaluating her character post-intimacy is not just about her. It's also about you. It's about developing your own ability to discern, to hold standards, and to lead your life with clarity. It's about not being a man who's easily swayed by surface-level experiences. A man who has sex and immediately starts acting like he's found his forever person is not powerful. He's emotionally impulsive, and emotional impulsiveness will sabotage your growth, your peace, and your path. So when you wake up the next morning, or you're driving home from a place, don't rush to define the experience. Reflect instead. Replay her words, not just her moans. Remember how she treated you before and after, not just during. Ask yourself if her presence calms your spirit or inflames your ego. Ask if her values align with yours, or if you've just been trying to mold her into something she's not, because ultimately, relationships don't survive on chemistry. They survive on character, and the man who can pause and evaluate, without obsession, without illusion, without fear, is the man who sets himself apart. He's not easily impressed. He's not desperate to be chosen. He chooses with clarity, with strength, with discernment.